welcome to our notes on slope. This is going to be number 2 in this unit. Number 2. All right. So, slope in math is, by definition, I'm going to write it down first, how much you are getting or losing each time. Okay? So let's say you're making money each day. How much money you're making is your slope. So for example, in this situation, Carl has $20 in his account, but every day he makes $25 more. So in this situation, the slope is the $25 more he's making each day. If a pattern starts with 5 tiles, but each figure gets 6 more, the slope is that each new one's getting 6 more, so the slope is 6. If a cup has 2 ounces of water in it, but every second it gets 1 more ounce, then the slope is 1, because each time you're getting 1 more. However, this one's tricky, because it says the cup has 2 ounces of water in it, but every 10 seconds it gets 4 ounces more. So here's the thing, slope is about how much you're getting each 1 second, or each 1 time, each 1 day, each 1 figure, not after 10 seconds. So if it took 10 seconds to get 4 more ounces, to figure out for 1 second, what you do is you take how much you have, so the slope is how much you have, which happens to be 4, divided by how much time it took. So if I got 4, but it took me 10 seconds, then when I do that and divide, I find out that every 1 second, I get 0.4 more. So then the slope in this case would be 0.4. So note that the formula for slope ends up being, so slope in general, is how much you have, the amount, divided by how long it took to get that amount. So let's say, we're going to say divided by time. Right? So if all these are 1, if it only took 1 second, 25 divided by 1 is still 25. So obviously the slope's 25 because we're trying to figure out for how much does it change each 1 time. So this is our general formula for slope. How much you've gotten or have lost and how much divided by how much time that took you. So in a table, let's say it's 0, 1, 2, 3, and let's say it's 10, 12, 14, 16. So I just made this table up. And what matters here is that in the first one, it goes from 0 to 1. So this time, because x is always time, and y is always amount, it took only from this point to this point, you're only changing by 1 second, your time. But however, from 10 to 12, the amount changes by 2. So the slope in this case is the fact from 10 to 12, you go up 2. And then time-wise, from 0 to 1, only 1 second passed, and 2 divided by 1 is just 2. So our slope in this case is 2. So if I had a different table, though, again, x is usually time, and y is usually amount. Let's say I start at 0, 10, but then the next one isn't 1, but the next one's like 5, and let's say 20. Right? For this table to figure out my slope, how much have I changed by? I went from 10 to 20. That's 10 whole dollars. However, how long did it take? My time went from 0 to 5. And that it takes 5. So then when I do 10 divided by 5, I get 2. And find out in this case, my slope is also 2. Give me a erase. on a graph. So let's put a point right here at 0, 1. My next point up here at 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you look, and I'll connect them, make a line. I'm trying to figure out my slope. I can pick any 2 points on my graph. I'm going to pick the 2 that I just put on there to make my graph. And then I'm going to say, so how much is it changing by in my y and my amount? Well, from here to here, I have to go up 1, 2, 3. So I'm going, slope, my amount, my y, is going up 3. Divided by how much time did it take, how many x's did I move over? From this point to this point, I move over 1x. So then my slope is 3 over 1, which is just 3. And then I'm going to do another one where it's not right next to it. So let's say there's also a point at 0, 1. But this time the point is at 1, 2, 3. And then let's say it goes up here at 4. Right, so I'm going to connect my 2 dots. And ask myself, between these 2 dots, how far up did it go? It went up 1, 2, 3. So my slope, the amount went up by 3. But how much time did it take? How much did my x's go over? They went over 1, 2, 3 as well. 3 divided by 3 is 1, which means my slope for each new 1, I only go up 1. And if you look from this point, if I just went over 1, this line crosses right here where it does go up just 1. See it? This dot right here? I went over 1, up 1. And that's how you figure it out for a graph. So in math, there's tons of other words for slope. Slope is the main one, but they like to use other things. For example, they'll call it growth because it's how much you're growing by. They'll also call it your rate of change because rate means how fast and change is how much you're changing by. So the rate of change or average rate of change, they also say. They also call it the change in y over the change in x because remember I said the formula for slope was how much you're getting, the amount, divided by how long it took you. Because that tells you for each one time how much you're gaining. Well, your amount is y. So that's the same thing as saying the change in y. Like how much are you gaining? Over, meaning divided by, time, how much time has passed, is your changes in x, because time is x. So this is also the formula, the change in y over the change in x. But in math, and this is funny, the change in, we have a symbol to represent that, and our symbol is a triangle. And in Greek, the triangle letter is called delta. So this is called delta in the Greek language, and we use Greek in math a lot for whatever reason. And so it's called a delta. And so also the formula is known as delta y over delta x. But that just means the change in y over the change in x. So in the same way, for figuring out on the graph, sometimes they have something called slope triangles. And it helps you to figure out your slope. So what you do is when you have a graph, you pick any 2 points, and it doesn't matter what the 2 points are. So here we see 2 different slope triangles. And it doesn't matter if I picked A and B, because they're closer and they get a smaller triangle, or if I picked B to C and that gives me a much bigger triangle. What matters is that I picked 2 points on my line, and it's best to make them cross at a perfect grid cross, like right here, it's right in the middle of a perfect grid cross, because I know the x is a whole number, and I know the y is a whole number, and I don't have to guess the decimal. Like if I tried picking this dot, for example, I know what x is perfectly, but that y is going to be some decimal that I'd have to guess, and so that's not a good dot to use because I don't want guesses. I want to know exactly. So this is a good dot because it has a perfect x and a perfect whole number y. So if I calculated the AB triangle, triangle AB, my change in y, how far up I'm going from this point to this point, is my triangle goes up 1, 2. So my triangle goes up 2 over 1, 2, 3. If I try to put 2 over 3 in a calculator, it would be a decimal. And it's better to leave them as fractions. So I'm going to leave my slope as a fraction because it doesn't divide evenly. Well, if I did triangle BC, I did its slope, my change in y, how far up, it's going up 1, 2, 3, 4, divided by how far over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, to get to that c. But look at these two fractions. They're the exact same. If I divide 4 by 2, I get 2. If I divide 6 by 2, I get 3. So they're both the same fraction. They're just, this one's more reduced. So if you put them both in the calculator for both of them, you'd get 0.66 for both of them. So they're the exact same slope. The only difference is when the triangle is bigger, the fraction's going to be bigger, but it's going to be the same fraction secretly. So it doesn't matter which 2 points you use. So it's important to be able to understand what slope means in a situation. For example, let's say x represents how many years have passed. So x right now is years. And then y is how tall a tree is. So right now is its height. So how much height it has, the amount of height. So the line below represents the growth of the tree. What is the meaning of the slope? So remember the slope, it's the same picture. The slope was 2 over 3 or 4 over 6, or once I divided, it was 0.66. Well, that means this one, after I divide and get the decimal, that means each year, because it's about 1 year after I divide, the tree gains 0.66 in height. However, if I want to talk about the meaning of the slope from a fraction, if I look here, this means every 3 years, because the bottom's time, it gained 2 in height. So if I'm talking about it from this fraction, I could say every 3 years, the tree gains 2 in height. These two mean the same thing. This one's just talking about each year, and this is about every 3 years. If I wrote this one down, it would be every 6 years, the tree grows 4 in height, right? But remember, slope is how much time has passed is on bottom, and the amount is on top. So it's how much you've gained divided by how much time has passed.